Hello everyone. Welcome back to Divine Wisdom Explained. If you're new to our channel, we're so happy you've joined us today. We dive into powerful stories from the Bible and explore the profound wisdom they offer for our lives. Before we begin, make sure to hit that subscribe button and give us a thumbs up if you find these stories inspiring. Today's story is one of the most profound tests of faith in the Bible, Abraham's sacrifice, a test of faith. Let's dive in and discover the lessons it holds for us today. Abraham's sacrifice, a test of faith, the promise to Abraham. The story of Abraham's sacrifice is one of the most poignant and powerful accounts in the Bible. It takes place in the book of Genesis, where we see a man whose faith was tested in a way that few could imagine. Abraham, originally named Abram, was a man whom God had called out from his homeland to journey to an unknown land that God promised to give him and his descendants. In Genesis 12 verses 1-3, God made a profound promise to Abraham. The Lord had said to Abram, "Go from your country, your people and your father's household to the land I will show you. I will make you into a great nation and I will bless you. I will make your name great, and you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and whoever curses you I will curse, and all peoples on earth will be blessed through you." Genesis 12 verses 1-3 NIV. Abraham obeyed God, leaving his familiar surroundings, his people and everything he knew to follow God's call. Over time, Abraham's faith grew, even though he faced many challenges along the way. However, there was one deep desire in Abraham's heart, a longing for a son. Although God had promised to make him the father of many nations, Abraham had no children. He was already an old man, and his wife Sarah was also beyond the age of bearing children. This created a crisis of faith for Abraham. In Genesis 15, God reassured Abraham that he would have a son, and that his descendants would be as numerous as the stars in the sky. Abraham trusted God even though the situation seemed impossible. And when Abraham was 100 years old and Sarah was 90, Isaac, the promised son, was born. A test of faith, the call to sacrifice Isaac. Years later, God decided to test Abraham's faith in a way that would require the deepest trust and obedience. The test would be monumental, and it would challenge Abraham to the core of his being. In Genesis 22 verses 1-2, God called to Abraham, saying, Sometime later God tested Abraham. He said to him, "Abraham." "Here I am," he replied. Then God said, "Take your son, your only son whom you love, Isaac, and go to the region of Moriah. Sacrifice him there as a burnt offering on one of the mountains I will tell you about." Genesis 22 verses 1-2 NIV. This command must have been heart-wrenching. Isaac was not just Abraham's son. He was the child of promise, the one through whom God had said that Abraham's descendants would be numbered. God had promised that Abraham would be the father of many nations, and now God was asking Abraham to sacrifice Isaac. At this moment, Abraham faced a test unlike any he had ever encountered. How could he sacrifice the son he had longed for, the son who represented the fulfillment of God's promises? Yet, we see that Abraham did not question God's command. He did not hesitate, argue, or look for ways to avoid the test. He simply obeyed. The journey to Moriah. The very next morning, Abraham prepared for the journey. He gathered the necessary items for the sacrifice: wood, fire, and a knife. He called 2 of his servants and set off with Isaac towards the mountain in the region of Moriah, the place where God had told him to go. Genesis 22 verse 3 tells us, Early the next morning Abraham got up and loaded his donkey. He took with him 2 of his servants and his son Isaac. When he had cut enough wood for the burnt offering, he set out for the place God had told him about. Genesis 22 verse 3 NIV. The journey would take several days, and during this time, Abraham's heart must have been heavy. Isaac, who was likely a young man by this time, did not fully understand the purpose of the journey. At one point, he turned to Abraham and asked, "The fire and wood are here, but where is the lamb for the burnt offering?" Genesis 22 verse 7 NIV. Abraham, in his deep faith, responded, "God himself will provide the lamb for the burnt offering, my son." Genesis 22 verse 8 NIV. Abraham's words were filled with faith, even though he had no idea how God would provide. He trusted that God, who had given him Isaac in the first place, was able to provide what was needed for the sacrifice. The moment of sacrifice. When Abraham and Isaac reached the mountain that God had designated, Abraham built an altar and arranged the wood on it. He then bound Isaac and placed him on the altar. At this point, Abraham's heart must have been in turmoil. But he knew that God had commanded this action, and he trusted that God had a greater purpose, even if he didn't fully understand it. Genesis 22 verses 9 to 10 describes this moment. When they reached the place God had told him about, Abraham built an altar there and arranged the wood on it. He bound his son Isaac and laid him on the altar, on top of the wood. Then he reached out his hand and took the knife to slay his son. Genesis 22 verses 9 to 10 NIV. As Abraham raised the knife, ready to offer Isaac as a burnt offering, God intervened. In the very last moment, when Abraham's obedience was about to be fully realized, an angel of the Lord called out to him from heaven, "Abraham! Abraham!" Genesis 22 verse 11 NIV. Abraham responded, "Here I am." The angel said, "Do not lay a hand on the boy. Do not do anything to him. Now I know that you fear God, because you have not withheld from me your son, your only son." Genesis 22 verse 12 NIV. At that moment, Abraham's faith was fully confirmed. God had seen Abraham's willingness to obey, even to the point of sacrificing his promised son. God had tested Abraham's faith to see if he would hold anything more dear than his trust in God. And in the end, Abraham's faithfulness was rewarded. God's provision, the ram in the thicket. After the angel stopped Abraham, he looked up and saw a ram caught by its horns in a thicket. This ram was God's provision for the sacrifice. Abraham took the ram and offered it as a burnt offering in place of Isaac. Genesis 22 verses 13 to 14 tells us, Abraham looked up and there in a thicket he saw a ram caught by its horns. He went over and took the ram and sacrificed it as a burnt offering instead of his son. So Abraham called that place, "The Lord will provide." And to this day it is said, "On the mountain of the Lord it will be provided." Genesis 22 verses 13 to 14 NIV. Abraham named the place Jehovah Jireh, meaning, "The Lord will provide." This act of provision was not just for Abraham. It was a sign to all generations that God is faithful to provide. Even when it seems impossible, God will make a way. Moral lessons from Abraham's sacrifice. 1. Faith and obedience in the face of uncertainty. Abraham's faith was tested to the utmost. He didn't understand why God was asking him to sacrifice his son, but he obeyed without hesitation. True faith means trusting God even when we can't see the full picture or understand his plans. Abraham's willingness to obey God, even in the most difficult of circumstances, teaches us the importance of obedience in the face of uncertainty. 2. God provides when we trust him. Abraham trusted that God would provide, even when the situation seemed impossible. And in the end, God did provide a ram as a substitute for Isaac. God is faithful to provide for us in our times of need. When we place our trust in him, we can be confident that he will provide for us, just as he did for Abraham. 3. God tests our faith to strengthen us. Abraham's test was not about God needing to know Abraham's heart. God already knew Abraham's faith. The test was for Abraham's benefit. God allows us to go through trials to strengthen our faith and to reveal to us the areas where we need to grow. Like Abraham, we must trust that God's tests are always for our ultimate good. For nothing is more important than God. Abraham loved his son Isaac deeply, but he did not allow his love for Isaac to become an idol. God must come first in our lives, even above our loved ones and our greatest desires. Abraham's willingness to sacrifice Isaac demonstrated that nothing should come before our obedience and trust in God. Conclusion. The story of Abraham's sacrifice of Isaac is one of the most profound tests of faith in the Bible. Through this story, we see Abraham's unwavering faith in God, his complete obedience, and the profound provision of God. It teaches us the importance of trusting God in the face of challenges, being obedient even when it's difficult, and recognizing that God is always faithful to provide. Thank you for joining us on Divine Wisdom Explained as we explored Abraham's sacrifice, a test of faith. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like this video, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a new episode. May God bless you with the strength to trust him in every step of your journey. See you next time.